Andy Burnham is the elected Mayor of Greater Manchester. In 2017, following the BBC documentary The Betrayed Girls, he commissioned a series of non-statutory reviews to examine historic child sexual exploitation across his region. He rejected calls for a statutory public inquiry with legal powers to compel evidence and punish obstruction. Instead, he chose voluntary processes that took 7 years to complete and relied entirely on the cooperation of the institutions under scrutiny. By the end, his own expert team had withdrawn, refusing to finish the work. The reviews found no evidence of cover-ups, reassuring on the surface until you read the small print and learn that Burnham's reviews were structurally forbidden from looking for cover-ups. When in January 2025, global attention finally forced him to acknowledge the need for compulsion, as Elon Musk, he still wanted a national inquiry limited and anchored to the same powerless reviews he had already commissioned. This is the story of how Andy Burnham designed a response that could absorb public outrage whilst protecting institutional stability. Listen to what I share and you'll understand why he smears me from behind a keyboard, yet is too scared to face me in public. First of all, it's the question of design. When institutions are accused of failing children, outcomes are determined by design. Design decides whether truth is forced into the open or buried alive. A process built with power hunts evidence down and drags it into daylight. One built without it waits to be fed whatever scraps others choose to throw. The response to historic child sexual exploitation across Greater Manchester must be judged on its architecture. Andy Burnham does not want people to do this. It exposes him as the architect of a response structured to contain exposure rather than force accountability. The response that was chosen by Burnham was not one where he responded to a scandal. He managed one. He chose exactly how allegations would be examined and what powers the process would have. Those decisions mattered more than every public statement he made afterwards. Burnham rejected a statutory inquiry. He rejected an investigatory process with legal teeth. Instead, he chose non-statutory reviews divided into phases dependent entirely on the goodwill of the institutions under scrutiny. The entire process took 7 years. No point of escalation was ever allowed to interrupt it. By the end, Burnham's expert team had withdrawn, refusing to complete the task they had been brought in to do. What Burnham chose decided everything that followed. What he knew whilst choosing it destroys his defence completely. Non-statutory reviews carry no legal force. Nobody can be compelled to attend. Institutions cannot be forced to surrender documents. Evidence cannot be tested. Under oath. Silence carries no penalty. Obstruction has no consequence. Participation is voluntary. Disclosure is selective. Where cooperation ends, investigation dies with it. These limits were not discovered later. They formed the foundation of the entire response. From the outset, control over evidence remained exactly where it had always been, with the institutions under scrutiny. Once those limits are understood, everything that follows becomes inevitable. First of all, we had Operation Augusta, part 1, the Manchester stuff, yeah? Victoria Goglia. The first phase was presented as an independent review into historic child sexual exploitation in Manchester, including the closure of Operation Augusta. Structurally, it was neutered from the outset. Greater Manchester Police decided which documents would be disclosed. Manchester City Council chose which records would see daylight. Individuals could refuse interviews without explanation or penalty. The review team could examine only what it was permitted to see. The process could describe failure and catalogue missed opportunities. What it could never do was force testimony, test contested accounts, name decision makers, or punish obstruction. Responsibility was dissolved into narrative. Decisions were reframed as culture. The record closed without a single person held to account. 97 members of the rape gangs were let free.